This whole chapter 24 and chapter 26 experience is less about David and more about David's understanding of God, because David knows something about God that maybe we need to wake up to, and that's this: if God would have allowed Saul, I'd be dead by now, which means that no matter how close Saul gets, he still cannot kill me. I'm preaching to somebody in here like myself who just trusts in God. If God wants it to happen, it will happen. And if God does not want it to happen, I don't care how bad everybody else wants it to happen, it will not happen because God is still in control. I wish I could get a witness here. God is still in control. I am not going to lose my peace. I am not going to lose my head. I am not going to lose my integrity. I am not going to lose my position with God because I want to act out of my flesh. Instead of acting out of my flesh, I'm going to act out of my faith. I know what it looks like to the world, and I know what the world would do, but the world ain't in this cave. I am. You ought to take a minute to realize that David has already been anointed king. And so while he has been anointed king as a lad of a boy, he has been going through a process. When he will ascend to the monarchy, he will be nearly 40 years old, which means that God gave a great space for David to get some things out of him that he could not take with him when he got ready to ascend to the monarchy. Maybe I'm preaching to somebody in here. God says the reason you ain't got there yet is because I got to get some stuff out of you that you have allowed to get embedded in you. And I can't take you up to the next level until I get the foolishness out of you that you allowed to muck your life up on this level. No mucking anymore. No mucking anymore. I'm raking the muck out of my life. Personal integrity. Read chapter 26 on your own. Read chapter 26 on your own. David now has a second chance. I want you to hear this. David now has a second chance to get the man that's trying to get him. Watch it, saints. And he doesn't do it. You missed it. Let me throw it back at you. David has a second chance to get the man that's been trying to get him. You read both chapter 24 and chapter 26 when you get a chance, and what you'll understand is Saul has a military campaign. In other words, Saul didn't just happen to be in that cave. Saul was in the cave because he was looking for David. So that means that David has all the more anger, all the more angst to get Saul, and yet he does not. He does not. Look at me. Look at me. What does it mean for God to really be in your heart? What does it mean for God to be in you to the degree that even when you could do it and everybody else is looking at you, calling you crazy, you still say, I won't do it? My friend did an illustration that I thought was really, Lynn, an interesting illustration. He went to his church Saturday evening about 6 p.m. and he took a roast and he put it on a table in front of the pulpit, and he put onions and celery and bell pepper and potatoes, and he injected it, etc. And the next morning when he gets to church, everybody's looking around and it's like, they cooking in the kitchen this morning? Nobody's cooking. He had taken the roast out, but the smell was still in the room. Right? So as he recalled the story to me, he said, you know, Hodge, people's like, oh, I bet that roast is tender all the way through, and I bet it tastes good. He says, and they got all that just from smelling it. Here's the thing. Whatever you allow yourself to be consumed by, that's the fragrance you give off. You cannot read the psalm and see how David intimately describes his relationship with God and get to the place where you realize that God hasn't been good to David. David says, God, you've been so good to me. I dare not do this to Saul because you can get Saul better than I can. Maybe the story for us is that we ain't been marinated enough. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe we've not been marinated long enough. Maybe for some of us, we're ready to go into the oven and God say, no, stay in the pot a little longer in the fridge. I got to marinate you until everything about you speaks about me. You want to talk about power? You came today, you wanted to hear the word of the Lord. Here it is. You want to find the most power, you'll only find God's power in your humility. How humble are you? Bishop, help me with this humility thing. You could get even, but you don't. That's humility. You could fight back, but you won't. That's humility. And with humility comes power. Some people have lost their edge. They've lost their edge because all they got left is anger. And they know how to fight, but they don't know anything about flight. Come on, you guys got to see this. Humility and power. David is a skilled warrior. After all, he has killed the Philistine champion Goliath, the 9'9" menacing behemoth Goliath. He's killed him. But not just that. Just a few chapters later, he goes out with a band of men and an army, and he beats the starch out of the Philistines again. So David doesn't let Saul off the hook because he's afraid of him, because he's a warrior. David lets him off the hook because he has integrity. Oh, I wish I was preaching to somebody in here who just tell your neighbor, I'm giving up my snap button. Look at him when you talk to him. Look right at him and say, I'm giving up my snap button. No more snapping for me. Well, what button are you going to get? I'm going to get a power button. I'd rather flip the switch on my power than to flip the switch on my snap. The word of the Lord for gathering of champions that everyone must choose today if you'll go back to your old ways or get power today. What are you taking home with you? I tell you this, I wouldn't let nobody treat me like that. When you accepted Jesus Christ, you stopped being your own and you started being his, and now it's up to him, not you. That's why scripture reminds us from antiquity, the battle is not yours, the battle is the Lord's. Y'all forgive me, but I done messed around and felt like preaching today. Stop taking on what God says already belongs to him. There's nothing you can do about it. Whatever you do is temporary. Whatever you do can be mitigated. God is the only one that can fight for you, and nobody can change it. God's the only one that can stand between you and sure death and tell death, I created them and I created you, and I command you to back up and I command them to live. God's the only one. God's the only one that can stand between you, success, and failure, and say to failure, not going to happen. Say to success, overwhelm them. And you turn around and things you did not think you could accomplish, you begin to accomplish. For you realize, like Paul realized when he told the Philippian church, I can do. Hey, 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 hey. Something happens when you have integrity that makes you remeasure justice. Without integrity, you cannot remeasure justice. Let me ask you something. Have you ever got even, but after the luster wore off, you wish you wouldn't have? God says, if you fight, I cannot fight for you. Elbow your neighbor. That's it. And you don't tell them nothing, just elbow them. I need to make sure they stay up doing this part. Lord, fight for me. Then hold your peace. Lord, give me justice. Hold. Lord, work for me. Hold. Lord, bring me through. Hold your peace. Chapter 27, hurry. Chapter 27. Chapter 27. A journey into the unimaginable. A journey into the unimaginable. Watch what happens in chapter 27. Saul continues to hunt David. Now, David let him off the hook twice. Say twice. David has let Saul off the hook twice. Saul Wade still seeks to harm him. Watch, y'all. Because if you don't ever get jealousy out of your life, jealousy in your life will turn into envy through your life. Envy is jealousy to the point of abhorrence. So now, even when Saul said, I ain't going to bother you no more, he couldn't. He couldn't stop himself. Here's why you got to get rid of jealousy. You got to get rid of jealousy, because if you don't get rid of jealousy, it'll put you to the place where you can no longer stop yourself. I wish I had a witness here. Anybody know anybody that just couldn't stop themselves? You looked at them and you say, I can tell this thing is going to destroy you. I can tell this thing is going to ruin your career. It's going to ruin your life, but they couldn't stop themselves. Couldn't stop themselves. Couldn't stop. Couldn't stop. Couldn't stop. Couldn't stop. An interviewer said that he had asked a number of the famous sociopaths in America this question. He says, why couldn't you stop? And every one of them responded this way. There was nothing I could do to stop myself. Whatever you don't get out now will control you later. Please, I plead with you, champions. I plead with you, champions. I plead with you. I plead with you. Don't let jealousy eat you up. Because if you let jealousy eat you up, you'll never be able to stop yourself. You'll know that it's going to hurt you, but you still won't stop. You know it's going to kill your career. It's going to ruin your relationships. It's going to destroy your name. It's going to take you out of the grip of God's grace, but you won't be able to stop. You won't. You won't. You won't. If you don't stop now, if you don't check yourself now, you'll become like Saul. Saul had no reason to be jealous, and he was jealous. He had no reason. No reason. Boy, I know some of you in here would like to tell those people that are jealous of you, you ain't got any idea. I know I make it look good, but I want you to know it's a struggle. You have no idea. You just want to tell your enemies, come by the house. Let me make you a cup of coffee. Let me give you some tea. Let me give you something to eat. Sit down here at this table. Let me tell you, you're jealous of the wrong thing, baby. There's nothing to be jealous. And yet, there are a number of people who don't know your story. God Almighty. They don't know your story, Katras. They don't know your story, but they jealous of an imaginative experience. They think they know. They think they know. But they have just made up. They put together a story, pasted your picture on top of it, and called it your life. And they don't even know that there's a number of things, a number of details, a number of contours that they left out. I wish to God you would know. I make it look easy, but it ain't easy. I make it look good, but it ain't good. I make it look convenient, but it is certainly inconvenient. He chases them yet again. Chases them yet again. Watch what David does. A journey into the unimaginable. What, number 4? A journey into the unimaginable. Watch this. The journey into the unimaginable. Watch this. Lynn, it's so funny. Because now David goes to ask for help from the people he's been beating. Boy, I love scripture. Golly. What happens when you lose favor with one man, but God gives you favor with your enemy? He goes to the Philistines and they hide him. They give him land. They've known what he's done. They've known how he's beat them. But God can turn their hearts. could you just make a note for me, please? Don't you ever give up. God can turn somebody's heart. Ty, don't ever give up, because right now it looks like it's tough for you. But God says, I'm working on somebody's heart. Somebody that don't even like you, I'm going to make them like you. Even if they only like you for 2 years, that's all I need them to like you for, so I can get you through this season. Don't ever give up. Don't ever. Don't ever. Don't ever. I need you to shake hands with a neighbor one time. Hold their hand. Look at them. Say, don't you ever give up. Don't you ever give up. Don't you ever throw in the towel. Don't you ever lose your faith. Don't you ever walk away. God's got somebody he's working on that's getting ready to work for you, preach Hodges. He's got somebody he's working with that's getting ready to work for you. Okay, let me wrap it. I'll say the rest of it next week. Let me wrap it up. Chapter 29. Chapter 29. If you look at verses 1 through 11, there is a jarring reality. Jarring reality. Personal integrity will not always be welcomed with a warm reception. You better hear me. You better hear me. People with personal integrity needs to know that there will be people who will misunderstand your personal integrity and perceive it to be something other than what it is. I need everybody in here who's ever been misunderstood to get yourself together right here. It ain't you, it's them. And they've had enough liars, backbiters, low-lives, dishonorable, disrespectful, low-character people in their life that now they've said everybody's that way. Can I tell you, still be who you are even though you are not that way. You might be misjudged. You might not be perceived correctly. You might be maligned or mislabeled, but don't stop being a